All right, Council, I see 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is our community's house. We are all guests here to serve it. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of Council for Monday, June 9th at 7 o'clock. We like to start off our meetings in a good way, and so I've asked Councillor Pope to provide our land acknowledgement this evening.
Thank you very much. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pope. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. I'd like to introduce it with one slight variation, and that's to have the recognitions moved ahead of the public delegations this evening. Okay, and so that's been moved by Councillor Murray, seconded by me. Any other questions on the matter? Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried and the agenda is adopted. Council, we have no meeting minutes that have been circulated with this package, so we're moving right along. I will now move into the recognitions portion of the evening. It's a great opportunity for us to get together and recognize youth contributions to art in our community. And so I have a bit of a script to keep me on target, but we're just very excited to host this event here tonight. So the District of North Vancouver's Community Heritage Advisory Committee initiated a Youth Heritage Art Contest earlier this year to promote, educate, and celebrate the district's built, natural, and cultural heritage. Heritage includes built natural and cultural resources that are unique, valued, and can be passed from generation to generation. Young artists aged 7 to 19 years were invited to create and submit pieces of art that draw inspiration from our community's rich and diverse heritage. On May 28, 2025, the committee selected 5 winners who demonstrated creativity and originality, good use of technique, and thoughtfulness about how they were inspired by our shared community heritage. Each artist has won an annual pass to the Museum and Archives of North Vancouver and a guided exhibition tour for up to 10 guests. These were generously donated by the Museum and Archives of North Vancouver and Polygon Gallery. We are grateful to our community partners for supporting this creative and inspiring initiative. On behalf of the Council for the District of North Vancouver, I'd like to recognize these young artists and call them forward to receive their prize. I will call each recipient forward to the front one by one with their artwork to receive their prize from Councillor Hanson and Community Heritage Advisory Committee member, Ms. Mel Montgomery. And Councillor Hanson serves as our council rep on the Heritage Commission as well. And so thank you very much for helping us out here today. After you receive your prize, please remain standing on the side for our group photo at the end. All 5 artworks will be displayed in the front lobby of District Hall during the month of July. So we do have a gallery space here, and we'll promote the winners through that space. So at this point, I'd like to invite the following contest winners forward. And we're gonna do this one by one, but I would like to invite Lucy Joy Rios to come up to the front, please. Welcome. And show the audience your presentation there. Lucy created a diorama of a black bear enjoying a picnic at the Lynn Canyon Suspension Bridge. Lucy's piece combines a variety of materials, including presentation board, cardstock, oil pastels, ink, bubble cord, yarn, popsicle sticks, hot glue, and nylon string. Lynn Canyon Park opened in 1912 and is a popular destination for tourists and North Shore residents. The suspension bridge is a defining feature of this park, along with an extensive trail network. Wonderful work, Lucy. Please pass on your artwork to the staff as we hand you your prize. And again, congratulations. And we're going to have you stand over there, and then we'll get the whole group together for a photo at the end. Next, I would like to invite up Gyuan Ella Shim. Welcome. Edgemont Village is one of Ella's favorite places to spend time with family, go for a walk, and read books at the Capilano Library. Ella used felt tip pens and pencil crayons to draw a section of Edgemont Village. She chose to depict the intersection of Highlands and Edgemont with Delaney's Coffee House, to reflect the warm and lively atmosphere of the village. Edgemont Village is a special place for our many district residents, and the Edgemont clock is particularly significant for the community. Ella, well done. Next, I'd like to welcome up Chloe Barker. Chloe painted an image of a raccoon and bird house on wood. This raccoon named Fluffy often sleeps on a tree outside Chloe's bedroom and is a great reminder of the district's wildlife and rich natural heritage. Wildlife and biodiversity are a significant part of the district's natural heritage. Congratulations, Chloe. I'd now like to welcome up Asa Rios. Asa found a sculpture of Link Trail of an Indigenous man. Since time immemorial, Indigenous people have been stewards of the land and water. Asa used various art media to create a personal expression of the sculpture, carved a rubber printing block, which was then stamped onto paper. The artwork conveys the deep connection between nature and Indigenous peoples and contributes to our collective path towards reconciliation. Congratulations, Asa. Sure, and just one more. Our next winner, Taeyong Angela Kim, unfortunately can't be with us this evening. However, I'd like to invite staff forward with Angela's artwork. Oh, we have it already, fantastic. Angela created a detailed drawing and artwork of the Vancouver steam clock in Gastown. Angela chose the steam clock as she appreciates its design and old-fashioned charm it brings to the community. The Gastown clock dates from 1977 and is a rare example of a horologist or clockmaker's work based on a steam source. Angela wants to focus on the clock's uniqueness, combining history with technology, which reminds her of the past while still being part of a modern city. Congratulations, Angela. So I'd now like to invite all of the representatives to come between our hosts here, and I'm going to invite the council to come in and flank them so that we can get a group photo.
Yeah, hold your come over here. We're gonna line up there. Yeah. There you go. Hold your and we're gonna snuggle in here. All guy gets to go into that. Just right into the front. One, two, three. Beautiful.
Again, congratulations. Good job. And again, we'll be displaying those winning art pieces outside the mayor's office here during the month of July. And I will make an offer, while you are absolutely welcome to stay through the council meeting, you don't have to, that's okay. Have a great evening. All right, council, we varied the agenda order, so now I'm going to go to public input. Our council reserves a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of any regular meeting of council for issues of concern from members of the community. We do have a sign-up sheet that gets set up through the clerk's office ahead of time. And there we go. And at this time, we have 4 speakers that are signed up to speak. And then, and nobody signed up at the item. So we will have time for additional speakers if anybody else would like to raise their hand and participate. But the first speaker that I have is Wade Winkler. Welcome. Come on up here and have a seat there. We're going to turn those microphones on for you. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. There are 4 of us here tonight from Shannon Crescent in Delbrook representing our families. There are other residents of our neighborhood who have made the decision not to attend because they fear retaliation, having experienced aggressive or hostile behavior. Our concerns relate to the continuing breach of a number of bylaws since March 2023, when a resident of Shannon Crescent built an unlawful, unpermitted second driveway in his front yard and on public property, which is in the middle of Shannon Crescent. He then began storing a hugely oversized bus, which is over 40 feet in length, on the second driveway in his front yard. We will each be addressing different aspects of our concerns regarding continued violations of multiple bylaws. I will outline the issues generally and the steps taken to date. We will then discuss the effect of the continuing breach of the bylaws, including safety, parking, detrimental changes to the Shannon Crescent community, impact on the appearance and character of the street, effect on property values, and the impact of the entire District of North Vancouver when breaches of bylaws are ongoing. Since March of 2023, we have sent numerous emails and made countless phone calls to various departments and a number of individuals in the district. It was confirmed to us in early 2023 that there are a number of bylaws, at least 4, which have been contravened, and we were informed that there would be enforcement. Despite this, we are now heading into our 3rd summer with the oversized bus and the unauthorized second driveway in the front of the house and on public property in the middle of Shannon Crescent. We have requested meetings and to be placed on the agenda for a council meeting. To date, we have not received any reply to our many requests for a meeting or time on the agenda for a council meeting. In May of 2024, my wife saw a poster for the Meet Your Mayor session at the library, and she attended, bringing forward our concerns directly in private to Mayor Little and his assistant Tracy. We implore the District of North Vancouver to take action immediately to enforce its bylaws for the safety and security of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker I have is Philip Bainton. Welcome, and when you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Little, members of council and district staff. Further to the introduction provided by my neighbour, Wade Winkler, I'm a long-time resident of 585 Shannon Crescent, which is immediately adjacent just to the south of 577 Shannon Crescent, where the RV in question is stored. I'd like to briefly outline some of the specific nuisances and concerns this RV has caused for my family, as well as my neighbours, all of which have been reported to the district on a number of occasions over the past 2.5 years. The first point is that the RV creates a safety and visibility hazard. The 40-foot RV is over 12 foot high and is stored all year round, with the front extended beyond the property line onto this district boulevard. This obstructs sight lines for drivers and poses a real danger for children, pets, and wildlife. I have 2 young daughters who often play in our front yard along what is usually a quiet residential street. The RV blocks their view and that of approaching drivers, putting them at more risk than they should be exposed to while happily playing. This is especially concerning given the increased number of quiet electric vehicles in the area. Second point is the RV causes a significant noise disturbance. The RV is parked just feet from my 9-year-old daughter's bedroom window. During the winter, its heater runs intermittently throughout the night, which regularly disturbs her sleep. And just so we're clear, I'm talking disturbs her sleep every night for weeks. In addition, early morning engine startups and prolonged idling create further disruption. Keep in mind, this RV is powered by the same type of engine found in transit buses and it's backed in along the property line with the engine just feet from our house. We've raised these concerns directly with the neighbor, but they've unfortunately been disregarded. This is not something that should be trivialized, and is not something that any family should have to endure in what should be a peaceful and livable community. Lastly, relating to street congestion and driveway confusion, the RV is parked on an unapproved secondary driveway. Visitors often avoid parking in front of that area, whether out of confusion or intimidation, resulting in more vehicles being parked in tighter areas of the street, including the bend of the Cresent. This only further increases safety risks for pedestrians and drivers alike. Furthermore, the RV owner has on multiple occasions told visitors to move their vehicle from in front of the RV. This behavior is a direct reflection of the lack of enforcement from the district and sends a troubling message about what's acceptable in our neighborhood. These are not minor annoyances or inconveniences. These directly affect the safety, peace, and quality of life for our family and neighbors. We've been living with these issues for 2.5 years, and I ask the district to please take meaningful action now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Philip Bainton. Next speaker I have is Carol Ann Hart. In here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. As we prepare to write large checks for our 2025 property taxes, we head into a third summer with the oversized bus. A giant bus unlawfully stored on a second driveway constructed without a permit and without notice to the district in the front yard and on public property in the middle of Shannon Crescent. Many efforts have been made by residents of Shannon Crescent to request that the district address these continuing contraventions. We've been promised since March of 2023 that action would be taken, and as requested by the district, we have been waiting patiently. Tickets have been issued. We have seen them posted on the windshield of the bus. We have witnessed altercations between the owners of the bus and DNV bylaw officers and members of the RCMP. At least one attempt in 2025 was made to tow the bus in the presence of DNV bylaw officers and members of the RCMP. We were subsequently advised that due to the oversized nature of the bus, it was not possible to tow, and alternate arrangements for towing would have to be made. Because the bus is a movable motor vehicle, the owner should be ordered to remove it from the property by driving it away. This would avoid the concerns about how it may be towed, and taxpayers would not unnecessarily have to bear the cost of expensive towing services for such a huge vehicle. You may be familiar with the broken windows research work of James Wilson and George Kelling. When laws are not enforced, communities begin to deteriorate, fracture, and break down. Individuals become frustrated and despondent. The rights of one or two people seem to take precedence over the rights of all others. In our case, the harmony of the community on our once happy, beautiful street has disappeared, and the character of the neighborhood has significantly deteriorated. This is a critical issue for all residents of the District of North Vancouver. Laws, including bylaws, are in place to ensure a safe and orderly society. When laws are not enforced, it may set a precedent for others, and it undermines the trust of community members in the District of North Vancouver. We are not here to complain about individuals or a 40-foot-long eyesore on our street. Our concerns are much more serious. Laws are not being enforced. We ask that the District of North Vancouver please take action immediately to enforce its bylaws for the safety and security of all.
Thank you for your comments, Carol Ann Hart. Next speaker is Mark Bowden. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, thank you. I'm certainly, I think I'm not going to be as eloquent as the speakers that have come before me. I'd just like to say that everything that they've said, I support 100%. I think that the individual that is breaking the bylaws is somebody that is very difficult to deal with, and it makes it very difficult in our neighborhood for parking. He will not allow you to park in front of his illegal driveway. I have tried to correspond with the district in the past via email, and I was assured and promised that someone would get back to me, and nobody did get back to me. And I tried to follow up and nobody got back to me again. I find that pretty disappointing, being that I'm a taxpayer and I try to follow all of the bylaws within my neighborhood. And the fact that people aren't following up with me and just at least listening to what we have to say is frustrating. And I just hope that something is done about it as soon as possible, because it has, I think we're going on 3 years. Living in the neighborhood, it is disruptive. It's disruptive for everybody. I do not live right next to the individual, which is fortunate, but I think it is a danger for kids playing and those kinds of things. And it's an eyesore. It's huge. It's like, I think we've said 40 feet, 12 feet tall, noise. So I appreciate you listening to us tonight. I just hope that you understand the impact that it does have within our neighborhood, the street, kids. And then just from the perspective of, I was recently laid off. And so I had a realtor come and look at our house to try to value it. And the first thing out of their mouth was, what is that parked on the street? That's a negative, it's a bit of an eyesore. So why is that there? And had to get into the story about why it's there and what we've tried to do to have it removed. So I really believe too that it does impact potentially the overall value of our houses, and if not value, the time that it would take possibly to sell a house when you've got somebody parking an RV out front. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Is there any update from staff, Mayor Little, in regards to enforcement?
I was just going to make a comment, and I see Mr. Stewart on the line, but I don't have someone from Bylaws on the line, but I'll just start off with my own comment on the matter. Everything the neighbors have said, I agree with. The council has, the District North Vancouver has engaged in escalating enforcement with the individual. We have had multiple instances with resources deployed, including bylaw officers, including the police, as was mentioned. We have attempted to remove the vehicle, but we have a burden on us to not damage the vehicle in the process. And the vehicle has been modified in such a way that a conventional tow was going to damage the vehicle. And so we had to, again, restart that process. We are in a combination of legal processes, both with adjudication of the bylaws that for the offenses that had been applied to them, and also because of threats of litigation from that particular neighborhood, all the correspondence that comes in gets shared with our legal team. And so if there has been a slow response to the neighbors, I apologize, but our process has been to refer it to the legal team to make sure that they're putting all of the comments from the neighborhood together in that process. But it doesn't excuse us for not having a timely response to the neighbors as well. All I can say is that we are willing to look at any other additional measures besides the ones that we're already engaged in with them to resolve the matter. We agree with your position, believe it is an illegally placed vehicle on the property, and it's self-evident from the that it is violating the regulations. And so we are still pursuing the matter through legal channels, including we have an adjudicator that comes in to look at these infractions and reviews the legal validity. The neighbor has asked us to cease actions while we're in those alternate legal processes, which we've disagreed with, and we've continued to enforce the bylaws against them in the form of tickets. So that's about all I can get into right now. The rest of it is sort of involved in a legal process, but I will tell you that we are still applying resources to try to get that resolved. And my apologies to the neighbors for the impact that it has had on your families. I recognize that it's been a significant imposition to you. Mr. Stewart, I have you on the line. I don't know if you have additional comments from administration.
Your worship, I just want to be,
I'm gonna have to ask you to be nice and loud. You're coming in very soft.
okay. We will take action. That's all I'm gonna say. We've been very lenient. We need to take action and we'll do that in the next week.
Yeah, we'll put everything on the table. If it takes remedial action orders, whatever it takes, we're still taking action on Shannon Crescent. So thank you for coming forward today. We still have some additional time for public input this evening. Would anybody else like to address the meeting from the public? Yes, Mr. Metcalf, welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. My name is Colin Metcalf and I live in Pemberton Heights. I'm here today to voice my strong objection to the district's solid waste management bylaw, specifically section 24A, which prohibits any waste container, including those containing only grass clippings or yard trimmings, from being placed at the curb the night before collection. Let's be clear. We all understand the importance of protecting our local black bear populations. The need to manage edible organic waste responsibly is obvious and uncontroversial, but grass clippings, tree branches, yard debris, these are not attractants. They are not a threat to wildlife, yet under this bylaw, even a sealed container of lawn trimmings is treated the same way as a bin of rotten food scraps. As an overtaxed municipal taxpayer, I can only conclude that this bylaw isn't about wildlife, it's about cost recovery. It's about a bloated municipal bureaucracy looking for easy enforcement targets rather than focusing on the real issues. It's frustrating and shameful. In my own case, I made sure that my food waste container was kept off the curb until the morning, but I placed a sealed bin of grass clippings curbside to ensure the timely early morning pickup. For that, I received a first-time offense notice and a $75 fine. Bylaws should serve the public interest, not defy common sense. If we want a community support for bear smart practices, then policies must distinguish between actual threats and harmless yard waste. Otherwise, all we're going to do is erode public trust. You ignore your own DNV bylaw, number 8310, when it comes to illegal encampments like the one at Bowser Island, you give those lawbreakers a pass. But your bureaucrats have no problem enforcing a ridiculous bylaw like this one and demanding a $75 fine from me, a fine that doubles if I don't pay it within 28 days. It's time to change section 24A to allow for the overnight placement of yard trimmings so long as they are securely contained and non-edible. That's a reasonable compromise. It protects wildlife, respects residents, and restores a bit of common sense to local government. In the meantime, speaking of change, how about changing the status quo by enforcing the illegal overnight RV camping around the municipality and enforcing existing parking rules that your officials continue to ignore? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I will just say that the bylaw, which was set up 3 councils ago, had that challenge in that you couldn't tell the difference from the street as to whether or not it was organics or yard trimmings as soon as they got rid of the old brown paper bag collection system. And so the decision was made by the council of the day to include anything curbside, regardless of whether it was specifically a bear attractant or not. And a subsequent council decided to remove the grace warning period where you would normally get a first offense warning and then proceed to a fine and ticket. And so unfortunately, it has led to a situation where we are catching a number of people who may or may not have actually had attractants in there, and they're getting fined on a first case basis. But all members of council have heard the matter now, and we'll see if there's an interest to take further action on altering the bylaw that's currently the record. All right, I see no further speakers at this time. So prepared to move on with this evening's meeting. Okay, council. We have a number of items up for consideration this evening, but many of those items are probably not the focus of a lot of our discussion. And so items 8.1, 8.4, 8.5, and 8.7, I think could possibly be considered for consent. so that we can focus our time on the ones that are more controversial and maybe don't have a consensus. Would any member of council like to withdraw any of those items, 8.1, 8.4, 8.5, or 8.7 from a consent agenda this evening? Okay, I'll put forward that consent agenda. Is there a seconder for that group? Thank you, Councillor Ma. Prepared to call the question on the consent agenda. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. So if you came for any of those items, item 8.1, 8.4, 8.5, or 8.7, they have just been passed. All right, so carrying on with the remainder of the agenda, the next item up for consideration is item 8.2. This is bylaws 8731, text amendment to CD zone 67.
I'm going to do an introduction and Tash is going to help me with the slides, please.
Note from this morning about how long is the presentation?
It's less than a minute.
Perfect. All right, Yan Zhang, opening comments. Any other?
I'm just waiting for the slide to come on. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are seeking Council endorsement to not hold a public hearing for a text amendment bylaw. So this is OCP compliant proposal to amend the existing CD 67 zone to allow a full service sit-down restaurant in a vacant CRU unit in the campus building, which is located in the Seylynn Village in the Lean Creek Town Center. Should council support staff recommendation, we will be able to bring back the full review of the proposal in the first and second and third reading of the bylaw. Next, please. So the existing CD 67 allows a smaller takeout restaurant option. And then this CRU unit, which is shown in the right outline, has been vacant since the occupation of the building, the entire building. So to allow the option for a full service sit-down restaurant, the applicant is proposing to construct a mezzanine level into the existing volume of the CRU to add more seating area. This expansion will increase the required commercial parking stalls, which cannot be accommodated within the existing campus building. And so the applicant has proposed a shared parking arrangement to use the excess commercial parking located within the Apex building, which is across the street. And the next, please. So although tonight it is a process question, it is relevant to council decision to talk about the public process. As part of the application process, a public notification to 1,159 nearby residences and businesses were distributed. Out of that, the staff received 17 responses, of which 11 comments were from the campus residents. Among the respondents, they supported the proposal as it was noted there is a shortage of full-service restaurants within walking distance, and commented that it would be an amenity and bring local economic benefits. However, increased traffic, odors, and rodent issues were cited as potential concerns. The applicant has indicated that odor or emission concerns would be addressed through treatment and venting systems in accordance with BC Building Code and health regulations. So to conclude, under the Local Government Act, a public hearing is not required when the proposal is consistent with OCP and involves non-residential uses. Given this is a minor OCP compliant tax amendment, which brings local economic benefits, staff recommend that a public hearing not be held. So with this, staff will be able to proceed with the statutory public notification and bring the bylaw forward for first and second and third reading at a future council meeting. Thank you.
Very much. Okay, any other additional comments from staff? No? Okay. All right, council, I see Councillor Hanson, you have a motion.
Yeah, happy to move the staff recommendation.
Councillor Back, are you seconding the motion? Thank you. Councillor Hanson, your comments, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm happy to support this proposal. I am sensitive to some of the concerns that were raised in the community outreach and community comments. I did, because of that, visit the site and give the matter some consideration. I do believe on balance, it would be best for this community and the broader community to allow this amendment. I think the community, I do not believe many of the concerns that were raised are likely to have significant impact on the surrounding neighborhood or on the neighborhood. I believe the restaurant would be of benefit to this community. The strongest voice was for a sit-down restaurant as an enhancement to the community. I do believe that the parking issues have been addressed. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't believe that some of the negative features that were raised, such as the smells and so forth, I don't believe on balance, when I give the matter serious attention, that those are going to be a concern for this area. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Not too much to add to Councillor Hansen's comments. I agree with all of his points that he has made there. Just noting that I believe this applicant has been hoping to put a restaurant in this location for quite a long time. And I think there's been, a good amount of outreach. This is an area of our community, I think, that needs more restaurants to create that sort of vibrancy. There's lots of people that have moved into that neighborhood, and I think this is exactly the kind of place that they're looking for. I see it as kind of a local restaurant. I think majority of the customer base will probably be walking or getting there, by other means than driving. So I'm not as concerned about the parking, even though they've accommodated the additional parking in the other building there. So on the whole, I'm very supportive and look forward to this restaurant opening. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ma.
Great, thank you for the presentation. I'm generally supportive, but I just want to have I just have a couple of questions. I just want to understand how this came about. For what reasons was a full restaurant not included in the initial CD zoning?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I'm able to provide an answer through your worship. So when the Lynn Creek Town Center, the local area plan was put forward, I think the focus was on Main Street being the hub, and the Main Street being the existing residential commercial area, and then the new Mountain Highway and I think it's Hunter, where the new community center is. That's been the hub. And then so going further away from that, it was envisioned that we should focus on the commercial energy within that intersection. So this CRU, which is closer to, so there's CRU within the Apex building, but for this campus building, it was envisioned to be just a small CRU serving like a cafe or not a sit-down restaurant. So that was the vision.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand now the district's reconsidering this. How much of a factor is it that the CRU's been sitting 7 years, empty for 7 years? The reason I ask this is if there's like a covenant on a project and developer has problems, I just want to make sure that we're still trying to keep to the spirit of the original agreement without this changing if the market conditions say I can't find a business. Like, I'm sensitive to the business, but I just want to try to understand what are the key factors in staff kind of supporting this.
Yes, I think that the full merit of the proposal should really be debated at the first and second and third reading of this proposal of the bylaw. But what I can say is that we, as staff, we make that the first grocery store in a new town center as a priority. And that is something that really is needed for the residents, to serve the new residents in the area. So it's being treated a little bit different. And we have never secured like a CRU or restriction of a restaurant through a covenant, but we do use covenant for grocery stores as usually as the first 10-year or 5-year sort of until the neighborhood and the local commercial area started to grow.
Okay, I've been down in the area a few times, dropping off my daughter at friends' places. The parking is quite limited. I was just wondering, what impact is there going to be on the 5 CRUs already in the Apex building if the surplus so-called surplus parking is kind of shared with the restaurant. Is there any impact anticipated, or has that been thought about?
Yeah, again, I think the merit of the proposal, including parking details, should be part of that bylaw introduction and second and third reading report. But I will say that with the Apex building, there is excess of commercial parking stalls provided. So they would be able to serve that 5 CRU and then also have additional parking capacity to accommodate this use in the other building.
Okay, thank you for that. Like I said, I'm supportive of this because it does create a sense of community, and as Councillor Back said, is, you know, it should be.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Sorry. Just want to be clear. We're only talking about whether we're waiving the public hearing or not. We're going to
Okay.
save your comments for first, second, and third reading when the matter comes back.
Okay.
So are you supportive of waiving the public hearing in this case?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much. Okay, Councillor Muri.
Well, the motion is that the District of North Vancouver rezoning bylaw 1448 is to amend the comprehensive development zone 67 in the zoning bylaw, and that a restaurant use is considered, and that a public hearing is not held. So it's kind of both. So I'll say that I'm happy to support a restaurant in this community. And I'm happy to waive the public hearing as well. Hindsight's 2020, obviously, but it is frustrating that the uses within a sustainable community, which was what we were attempting to design it for, has been such a challenge in Lower Lynn and Lower Capilano to try to get a grocery store. I always go back to the city of North Vancouver. When they began to redevelop Lower Lonsdale, the first building that they put in was a grocery store on Esplanade. It was the IGA, the market. And that was the first thing they did, was to put a grocery store in, because everybody needs groceries when you are building density up around it. So we are so lacking those kinds of services. And part of it is that we have not been, in my opinion, we have not been specific with the zone and the uses of the buildings on the retail. And we still have not applied minimums and maximums to unit size in these zones, allowing for commercial operations to act in retail space. Commercial should have been on the second floor, retail on the main floor. You offer the butcher, baker, and the candlestick maker, and you have a sustainable community. We sadly just continue not to try to achieve that. And I thought we were actually bringing minimums and maximums to discussion, but I understand it's just been on specific sites. So I will bring forward a motion there a little for us to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hey, just my own comments on the suitability of waiving the public hearing. Takeout restaurant was contemplated. Becoming a sit-down restaurant is a fairly minor change, and I think that it's reasonable for us to waive the public hearing in this case. It's not too far off of what was originally anticipated, so I'll be supportive of the waiving of the public hearing in this matter. The item's been moved and seconded. I see no further speakers. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Council. Next item up for consideration is item 8.3. This is on-street parking of large and recreational vehicles.
Your Worship, if I may make some introductory comments.
Ms. Atfa, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and council members. Tanya Oswald, with your permission, will begin a presentation in just a minute or so. This report, item 8.3, discusses the issue of street parking, in particular large vehicles and recreational vehicles. We know that people will park on our streets for different reasons, and this situation changes and is dynamic. When it comes to enforcement, the overall philosophy of the district is one of seeking voluntary compliance with our bylaws, that most people will comply, especially if given time, and education can be an important first step. So this philosophy is supported by a council policy. It's the complaint and enforcement policy, and it's one that staff follow when investigating complaints, and it's about fairness and reasonableness. There is a link in the report. It's on the first page of the report, and this policy is available online. This current approach to enforcement, though, does have some important boundaries. When it comes to street parking, for example, parked vehicles can't be unlicensed or uninsured, and this is something that staff inspect on a regular basis. Staff, however, are also able to consider an individual's personal circumstances and their ability to comply. And this is important when people may be using their vehicles for shelter, whether that's due to affordability challenges or other reasons. So with your permission, I will ask Tanya to start, and staff are seeking council's feedback on different approaches and the appropriate balance on this issue. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tanya Oswald, and I am part of the district's community planning team. I'm here tonight to provide a brief presentation regarding large and recreational vehicles parked on street on a long-term basis in pocketed areas of the district. For Council's consideration, options to further manage on-street parking of these vehicles are provided at the end of the presentation, or can also be found on pages 63 and 64 of tonight's agenda package. The district uses parking regulations and enforcement as tools to manage on-street parking supply and demand. Availability of on-street parking has impact on the general flow of goods and people. For example, thinking about how many times a car needs to drive up and down a street looking for an on-street parking spot to access daily needs. Staff monitor street space and engage with users and businesses to help address on-street parking management. A vehicle count conducted by bylaw enforcement staff earlier this year observed approximately 76 large and recreational vehicles parked in pocketed areas of the district, all of which were licensed. This past week, staff revisited 2 areas in the previous count and found 59 licensed large and recreational vehicles similarly parked in areas of least conflict, such as secluded areas or those with low traffic flow. Of those parked on street, some vehicles appeared to be used as living accommodation. We know that individuals may live in their vehicles for a variety of different reasons, such as being an alternative housing option or as a personal choice. For example, folks that may be living elsewhere but are living in their vehicles because they're temporarily working here. We also know that there are those that live in their vehicles out of necessity as a last resort to being unsheltered. Council, we see all these types of residents in our community, and it's constantly changing. While we can't say right now what the exact proportions are of this mix, district staff continue to respond accordingly on a case-by-case basis. The district's current regulation for on-street parking of vehicles is in the street and traffic bylaw. This bylaw regulates the stopping, standing, and parking of all vehicles and includes regulations specific to those that are large and recreational, such as having 24-hour timed parking restriction, the prohibiting of vehicle use as living accommodation, and restrictions on vehicle weight and length. The enforcement approach of street and traffic bylaw regulations is consistent with the district's complaints and enforcement policy from 2018, which sets out a fair and reasonable framework guiding staff to exercise discretion when handling complaints and determining methods of enforcement. This approach may involve the responses shown on this slide and has generally led to voluntary compliance with the expectation, as is the case with large and recreational vehicles, that they are kept in safe and orderly condition. Enforcement actions like ticketing and towing may be used where cooperation and compliance is not achieved, other measures have been exhausted, or public safety is at risk. In cases where it is suspected that an individual may be experiencing or at risk of homelessness, a community outreach worker may be called upon to assist. Their non-enforcement role is distinctly positioned to build relationship, trust, and facilitate connection to needed supports and resources, such as shelters or other needed supports. The RCMP may also assist in providing outreach support as needed. Response to homelessness is a shared responsibility requiring coordination across all levels of government, community service providers, and others. Staff have identified 4 options that may build on how the district currently responds to large and recreational vehicles parked on street. Council may consider adopting an incremental approach to any one or several of the measures presented here across this range of options. The approaches for council's consideration are approach A, where staff would maintain the existing approach as has been described in today's presentation and detailed in the report. Approach B is oriented around improving methods used to promote education and awareness of regulations and enforcement, including advocacy for a sub-regional coordinator role to support outreach and homelessness response on the North Shore. Next, approach C involves more regular and frequent use of penalty measures. And lastly, approach D involves assessing opportunities for more time-limited parking in the district. For example, as was done recently in April along some streets in the Lower McKay area. Lastly, as council considers these approaches, we recognize it in approach C and D, for example, that while enhanced enforcement and parking regulations may help to reduce some neighborhood impacts, they will likely not permanently remove the parked vehicles from the area, and new or existing conditions may develop. At this time, council may identify a preferred approach and staff would report back to council with additional information, or council may direct staff to maintain our existing approach and take no further action. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Staff are available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Milburn, did you have additional comments before council debate?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to take a moment, as Bowser Island was mentioned earlier tonight, and just wanted to distinguish this conversation and this report from Bowser Island. Bowser Island is dedicated highway land. It is owned by the provincial government and outside the jurisdiction of the District of North Vancouver. That's been specifically allocated through statute. They've made themselves immune to local government regulations and bylaws related to land use and development. In the case of Bowser Island, the district has heard serious and significant concerns from the community with respect to nuisance and access and safety. We have passed along those comments and concerns to the province. At this time, we have seen action to date from the province, including an investigation, so attending the site. We've also seen the addition of a bin to collect refuse added to the site, and we've seen the installation of gates, yellow large gates installed just outside Bowser Island. They appear to be open. So we are still waiting on full response from the province, but at this time, the district has pursued action and asked the province to respond in a timely way. Thank you, Your Worship.
Are those gates open or closed, Mr. Milburn?
They are open last I saw, Your Worship.
So the gates were installed, but they haven't actually been closed. Okay, thank you. Council, I'm going through this report. I'm having some challenges as to what I should put forward as a motion on this, because the reality is we kind of need to do all 4. There's elements of all 4 of them are necessary and are appropriately applied in different circumstances. Obviously, I want to monitor, manage complaints, keep areas clean, orderly, and apply discretion in bylaw enforcement. Do I think it's sufficient? No, I don't. I don't think that maintaining the current status quo on this is going to be satisfactory. And so I'm supportive of all of the other actions as well, B, C, and D, that we do a better job of educating people on the regulations, more frequent inspections, advocate for sub-regional coordinator positions to help actively manage this growing problem in our community, plus enforce more 24-hour regulations and ticketing and towing, explore opportunities with ICBC, RCMP, and also assess areas that may benefit from increased time-limited parking. I want to keep all of these options still on the table. And so I want to make sure that I'm giving direction that to staff that helps them move forward in the matter. But the way this is set up as being 4 separate approaches, I have a challenge. I think they're all part of an integrated response process. And so I guess I'll ask the question before I put the motion on the floor, but if I put forward all 4 motions and authorize it, is that clear to staff what's intended by that? Ms. Atva or Ms. Walker?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Yes, that would provide clear guidance to staff, given that it has been acknowledged that there is a spectrum of enforcement that's put forward here for council's consideration today. What has been identified in the report is, depending on council's direction, one or all, that staff would report back with more detail around what some of those steps would be, what the implications might be for resourcing, budgets, etc.
So in my view, all of these tools should be available. I'll be supportive of a motion that all 4 of these tools approaches are taken. Seconded by, I do have Councillor Ma as the next speaker on the matter. Councillor Ma, are you willing to second?
I am.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I don't really have too many more comments on the matter, except to say that the current situation is not satisfactory. It's frustrating for people to access public facilities such as the tennis center down on Lloyd. It's created an unsafe environment. One of my daughters works in the general neighborhood and always feels quite unsafe walking through that area. And I'm sure that's representative of the experience of a lot of people in our community in those spaces. And so I do recognize that we have to operate within the limits the province has prescribed to us for actions, and also the ability to defend them through a court process if necessary. But I think that we need to approach this on all fronts. So I'll be supportive of all of the approaches being advanced. Councillor Ma, your comments on the matter?
Thank you. Maybe I just want to thank you for the presentation. It's in some ways it's a tough issue, but in other ways, we have bylaws that we need to enforce. I have some questions, if I may first. A working group was struck, I think, last October with staff from the city and the district. Can staff give an update on, what ideas or actions have come out of that?
Ms. Atta?
Thank you very much through the chair to Councillor Ma. Staff from the district across different departments met 6 times since December with counterparts from parks, bylaws, planning, safety at the city of North Van, and we've seen a fair bit of value in that, and I can touch on some of those points, so much so that it's been requested that we continue to do that. We met as recently as a couple weeks ago. Some of the benefits that I would say have come from those meetings are we've been able to share information on where we see issues popping up, not only with regards to parking and RVs, but homeless encampments and other issues. We've been able to talk about some of the areas we've learned about in terms of data sharing, mapping, things that other communities around BC have used. Number of other values in terms of that ability to reach out really directly to our counterparts, which makes it super efficient for us and easy for us to reach out and look for solutions. I believe that, as I said, that there's interest in continuing that working group on a somewhat informal basis as we see the need. And if I might add one more piece to that is a couple years ago when all of the North Shore communities came together for the North Shore Homelessness Action Initiative, there was also that desire for looking at our protocols, how we approach enforcement, how we look at a housing first model. So this continues that work that was approved by this council as well. 6 times, correct.
Councillor Ma?
I know Tanya mentioned something that the most recent count was 59. Do we have a sense of the number of vehicles in the district over the past couple of years?
Do we have any trend numbers on that, Mr. Milburn?
Thank you, Worship. The most recent count was less. However, overall, I think we've seen a general trend, not just in the district, but in communities across British Columbia, of an increasing amount of both homelessness as well as RVs that are parking in both provincial highways and pullouts and so on. But certainly in the district, we've seen a challenge, and this is a constantly evolving challenge. This is a mobile use, and so it's moving to different areas, and staff follow up where those occur. But general trend would be, I would say, an increasing demand for this kind of use in the community. And I guess I describe it as that because that's how the residents see it. They see it as typically their place of residence. But it definitely creates potential for increasing conflict the more we see it in the community.
The district is working on a curbside management plan or program, and among other things, will look at the current practice of work truck parking on public roads. I mean, that still needs to come before council and for us to have a fulsome discussion. But since we are moving with all four of these approaches, strengthen compliance measures, would that potentially have an unintended consequence on the work trucks?
Mr. Milburn?
Your worship, interrelated issues, work trucks or other business uses of the street are competing for similar space. And however, we do have some businesses that sometimes I would say take advantage of that opportunity and maybe park their fleet on the street or have no other choice because they have insufficient yard space. So that is an issue as well. As you mentioned, staff are reporting back on curbside usage specific to opportunities. Council passed a motion asking for opportunities to use district lands to be able to either lease or license those lands for businesses to be able to park. So we will be returning that to council in the future. In terms of this use, I think if we look at consistent enforcement in areas where we are seeing conflict between adjacent businesses, adjacent recreation users, and so on, and I'm hearing tonight council's interested in options for enhancing the amount of enforcement that goes on. And you asked about unintended consequences. One of those consequences is related to homelessness. And the council has certainly in the past made decisions to increase the amount of supportive and social housing in the community to help address the issue of homelessness. And as we see those facilities open so far and into the future, hopefully that will create further opportunities to direct people who are being displaced by any enforcement actions of the district. Thank you.
There's some thoughts. I know back on April 1st when the 2-hour time limit parking around tennis center was extended. You know, council also said that staff would monitor the situation and, if necessary, escalate the enforcement. With the increased parking of RVs in the community, I believe that a compassionate approach was warranted. Some people have asked me, you know, why do we need to be compassionate? My answer is, as a society, as a Canadian society, you know, compassion has been one of our key attributes. However, that compassion is not endless if we feel that, you know, some people might be taking advantage of that and not following the rules as we as a society have established. I have spoken with some of the people in the vehicles, and just from those few times, some of them are employed, but for their own reasons, they're choosing to live in their vehicles. And some of them are in the district only on a seasonal basis. This by no ways is a consensus or a census, but I would say that not everyone living in RVs would fit the traditional definition of homelessness. In my opinion, the number of RVs, large vehicles exceeding 72 hours parking has reached a tipping point at 76 or now 59 vehicles. That, in my opinion, is high and is a concern. We also have to look at the impact on the availability of parking for businesses, users of the tennis center, in addition to, you know, what's happening with the environment in terms of where does their waste go, and, you know, in this general street disorder. So I'm glad that council is looking at implementing or approving all four approaches, and I will trust staff to come back with a plan to see how this works. But it is a concern in our community. So, you know, I look forward to the staff reporting back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I do support the motion calling for escalation or attention to all 4 of the areas of concern. However, my comments are going to be substantially focused on approach C, strengthening compliance measures. I do thank staff for their comments and hard work in the matter. And I thank my the counselor and mayor who spoke before me. This is, of course, a very challenging problem. In the report, we learned that 76 large and recreational vehicles are parked on the street. And in comments today, we've heard that that trend is increasing. And they, of course, fall into a variety of subgroups. Some of these are simply unoccupied large RVs. Well, these persons need to find another place to park. Some years back, I, for a short time, illegally parked a boat trailer on the street. I got a ticket. I found a better place to put my illegally parked boat trailer. So in some cases, that's the analysis. Now, at the same time, some are living in RVs and can in fact afford pad rental or have jobs. Again, these people simply need to be encouraged through enforcement to move off of our streets and into an RV park in the usual way. And it's the final troubling group that we're all challenged by, and that's those who are living in their RVs as an alternative to homelessness. Now, let me say right off the bat, these persons need somewhere to go. The responsibility for these persons who would be homeless outside of their RVs lies ultimately with the provincial government, but their impacts are felt by all of us in our community. I would support greater enforcement of existing bylaws against people who are living in their RVs in our community. At the same time, I've supported calls for transitional housing. And if we're going to tell people that they can't live in their RVs in our community, from my point of view, we need to create a safe and hygienic location with proper services and proper security where these people can go and live in their RVs. I mean, I've had the call people have said to me, where can we live? I can't afford a house. I don't want to live in the forest. Where can I live in an RV in the district? And the answer is nowhere in compliance with bylaws. We need a comprehensive plan to address homelessness, and we need community sanctioned locations where RVs can be parked as part of this plan, with services and security, fresh running water, hygienic toilet facilities, and policing to ensure these areas are safe. It is not fair for our community to have people living in RVs on our streets, and it should be enforced and it should be stopped. At the same time, it's not fair to tell people who cannot afford better housing that they cannot park in our district when there is nowhere else for them to go. With better enforcement, we may end up with a better understanding of how many persons are staying in RVs in our streets out of financial necessity. And as we await that data, I suggest we lobby the provincial government for plans for how we will assist persons who we're proposing to displace. And may I say as well, if we face charges for creating the type of space that these people need, I suggest we send the bill to the provincial government, because it's their responsibility to address this problem, and it's their lapse that is creating this problem.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pope.
Thank you very much. Well, we have a big problem and it's growing and it's going to get worse. We don't do something about it. I'm concerned about people who are genuinely unhoused, have nowhere else to go, and have somehow been able to afford an RV or are living in their car. And that's why I brought forward a motion over a year ago to build transitional housing. But no progress has been made by this council. So we need to move forward on identifying a site and deciding what type of housing will be on it, or if we enable the unhoused in RVs to temporarily live there. However, not all who are parked there are genuinely housed. And I recently learned from some workers at the North Shore wastewater treatment plant that some of their fellow workers are parking their RVs because it's close to the poo plant. And it's very convenient for them to just park their cars and walk over to work. Now, they should not be parking there. And those are the people that we should target our stricter enforcement approach, stricter enforcement approach to, so that they will pay the fines and they will find some other way to go. I also think we can pressure, potentially pressure PCL, the contractor down there, to do more to accommodate its workers who are coming in from out of town. They certainly do that with the senior managers and put them all up in accommodation. But for many of these other workers, they're left to fend for themselves in this market, which we know is tough, but still they're working full time and they're being paid well down there. So they can find alternate accommodation. And I would like to see a tougher approach with them. The problem is we still don't have the data on exactly who is there, who is down there, and what kind of a situation they come from. Are they genuinely unhoused or are they working? And I believe this was supposed to be part of the working groups information gathering. And I'm really disappointed that this report really doesn't, provide any of this kind of information. Like, I had hoped that there would be documentation of who's down there so we could make better decisions about where we should go with this. And we don't have that. So I would definitely support an outreach worker dedicated to trying to get people living in vehicles more support and access to community services, the people who really need it. But again, we need to identify them. So going forward, I think that I would really like to see the staff's focus their attention on those on actionable items that could come out of these working groups with the city. After 6 meetings, I think there must be a lot of information gained, and I would hope that some of that could be translated into an actionable item. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pope. Councillor Back.
Thank you very much. I agree with all of the comments that have been made around the table so far. What we're dealing with here is a growing issue in our community and communities across this country. It's an issue that's driven by rising housing costs, obviously, and economic hardship. As has been highlighted, it's important to recognize that the people that are living in RVs are not a homogeneous group by any means. There are a variety of different cases, people with various backgrounds, and they're there living in that situation for different reasons. And I think we have a small enough number of them in our community right now that we should know all of them. We should know what their story is, why they're there, and what their needs are. And so when we're looking at the approach, I do agree that we need to look at some combination of all of these approaches that are presented here. But I certainly see the need for a coordinator, somebody who can be out and really have a good understanding of what all of these folks' situation is. But I also recognize that there's concerns from businesses in the area. I did talk to one business owner down on West First not too long ago who said, I pay the district $300,000 a year just about in property taxes. And yet every morning I'm cleaning up garbage and dealing with the fallout from some of the folks who are just parked right in front of his business 24 hours a day, all the time. And so I think there is some level of strengthening compliance measures that needs to be addressed for the sake of, say, the businesses and residents down in that area. I can't stress enough how we need to collaborate and work in conjunction with other stakeholders on the North Shore to address this. we should be very much in sync with what the city of North Vancouver is doing and how they're approaching this. Homelessness knows no borders, city, district, or otherwise. So I would appreciate a report, back from this group and hopefully some solutions that we can work on together. I think it was very clear when our council met with the City of North Vancouver Council, our only meeting, in fact, of the two councils. This was the topic that we wanted to cover because we feel it's, one that needs some real attention. So, I think there's various solutions that we could be exploring. The reality is it's based in a need for housing. We have one homeless shelter that's on the North Shore and it's regularly full. There is a need. I also supported Councillor Pope's motion to explore opportunities for transitional housing, which again could be part of the solution. But we do need to have a coordinated approach that, it shows empathy and works with these folks and also, understands the broader issues that are in the community as a result of people living on the streets in their RVs. So there are lots of other, cities that we can look to. There's no one solution, but, solutions are out there. And I think we need to be creative and work together to find them ones that will work for our community. So looking forward to seeing how we can work on all of these approaches to find a solution that will make a difference here in the district.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Were there any solutions that came out of the meeting with the City of North Vancouver other than how we were going to communicate and data collection?
Ms. Atha?
Thank you very much to Councillor Murray through your worship. Some of the items that were discussed specifically also were around frontline resourcing, staffing issues related to cleanup, for example, and how each municipality handles that and pays for that. So I would say,
I mean, like solutions in regards to the people that are living on the street, like, taking some of the pressure off from the tennis center, for instance, on Lloyd, moving some people, maybe allowing, vehicles to come in the evening, but they have to move out in the morning, like anything like that, like sort of, let's do something now approach instead of studies and reporting back and budgets.
thank you through your worship. What I would say to that is that part of the value and purpose of meeting was also to establish those good lines of communication so that information sharing as a first step allows us to understand how issues can be coordinated and not be pushed from municipality to municipality. For example, in knowledge around parking time limits, knowledge around issues around our tennis center, for example. So certainly a lot of appreciation from City of North Van staff, right from their fire chief to parks, bylaws, and planning staff and others. So I would say that in my perspective, the value of that group was less around solutions, but understanding the issues, the complexities, and how we can keep working together.
But we did have a number of meetings and we did ask, when we met, we wanted a report back about what was going to happen with those meetings. And it sounds like there's a structure in place, but not so much solutions. How many of the 76 units or vehicles are abandoned?
Through your worship, I don't have the answer to that question and might ask if bylaw staff has
Mr.
that
Milburn or
information
Ms. Walker?
available at this time.
Ms. Walker?
Carol, just move your mic towards you. Nope. This one there. There you go. Now you might have to turn it back on.
There are a number of vehicles.
I don't think your mic's on. There.
Thank you. Apologize.
No.
There are a number of mixed use of parking down there. Some have, as we've mentioned, some are using the street just to store their motorhomes where they should be having them stored somewhere else. There are others that are actively being lived in, and then there are others that are empty, and it takes us a bit of time to really figure out what we're seeing there. Sometimes it's hard to see in there. There are a mixture of businesses that have abandoned vehicles
or businesses that haven't used a particular vehicle for quite a while. So we're monitoring all of those. We do not want people to be just using our district streets just to store their commercial or otherwise vehicles. So we're on that every day.
Okay, so how many of those do we have? Do we have a number?
Well, for instance, I can give you some statistics of our enforcement tickets that we've issued in 2024. We've issued 22 tickets for parking longer than 72 hours. And we generally have followed up with a number of tickets in some situations and eventually towed them. We expect them not to be stored there. And we're kind of in line with our 2025 count as well.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a number of vehicles that people are using our streets for storage. So we need to remove those vehicles. And I think council needs to understand what you need from us for you to be able to do that. I think we've been monitoring and trying to enforce this for as long as I've been a councillor. There's been people living in campers and trailers as part of the workforce in this community for decades. So we have those. We have people that are living rough. I would love to know if they've been displaced from existing housing, where they've come from, if they're transients from outside of the province. I would love to get that information. I think if we could take the time that we're meeting with the City of North Vancouver to ask those questions and get some data so we understand because the problem is very complex, that would be a go. If we have abandoned vehicles down on Lloyd Street, they need to be removed. So again, what do you need from this council to remove them? If no one's living in them, if they are abandoned, if they are unable to move, what do we need to do to move them? I think the community wants us to make some decisions. Those decisions would be, apart from the 4 options, I do not understand why the Tennis Society is saying that they're requesting us to remove the bans on the south end of Lloyd Avenue. I do not know why they are saying that there's bans and we're saying that there's not. So I'm going to drive down there tomorrow and go look myself. We need to push some of this down the road. So there's some immediate relief from around the tennis center. There's a great security risk that many people feel down there. And so we need to do some quick wins, some low hanging fruit. Unfortunately, our hands are tied in regards to Bowser Island because it's the province and the province doesn't want to deal with their property. They're allowing it to exist in the state that it's in. They've put a gate in, they're not closing the gate. We also have to recognize that we're as much a part of the problem as the province and the federal government, I believe. We've gentrified our community, and Councillor Hanson, with great respect, I don't know where you are going to find a sanctioned piece of property on the North Shore that is going to allow low barrier RV living, where services are provided to accommodate even a growing problem that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't know what municipality in this region has been able to deal with this issue. Mayor Little, I'll take the other 2 minutes. So within the motion, the 4 items, I do want to ask for an amendment that staff report back as soon as possible on how we can remove these derelict, empty vehicles, how we move stored vehicles that are being stored on our streets. That will open up some space down there where we can shift people that are living rough in their vehicles further down the road to give some release to the tennis center. I'd also like to understand where the workers are, who they're working for. There is a business in the district of North Vancouver that used to accommodate their shift workers. Mainly they were out for days or working on site for days. And if they were coming from outside of the area, the Sunshine Coast, the Island, Mission, they would bring campers in. I understand that that's no longer a practice. And so many of them are on local roads. So I think we do need to understand where these workers are. Impacting workers that are coming in to work on infrastructure, we have to talk about that and deal with that. But I think there's some immediate things we need to do. I want staff right now, because we've been talking about this for so long, to focus on those quick wins, putting some more restrictions in, possibly looking at allowing people to have the evening, but once the evening hours are over, possibly move out of the area and move, because many of them can. And report back quickly on that. As far as budgets, endless meetings with the City of North Vancouver talking about structure. The City of North Vancouver has implemented parking restrictions in the area, and it has impacted us. And we've been doing that back and forth for many years. They've increased the parking restrictions. So we can't continue to monitor. We do have to take some action, show that we are enforcing this. We've heard a lot of enforcement issues tonight from our community. What we're doing right now is not working. Let's take some action and then report back on the action. That's what I'm interested in.
Councillor, you did make a motion in there, and we do have a motion on the floor. I'm happy to second your motion as a follow-up motion, and so we'll just complete this one, and then we'll come on to that as a secondary motion. Appreciate that. Councillor Ma, second time speaker.
Yeah. I want to say that some of the people and the business owners that I've spoken to who have, registered complaints, because I said, look, put it into RAP so we can get some stats and, make sure staff are aware of it. People that have done that aren't bad people. And speaking with them, and some of them are my neighbors, they want bylaws to be applied fairly to everyone. And if there are people living in RVs that need better housing options, then we need to work with the province to make that happen. At the district, we don't have social workers. I'm not sure if we want to make our bylaw officers to take on that role. We need to reach out to the province so they do their jobs, but we'll work with them, but this is their job. I worked at BC Housing, and when we were decamping tents, other ministries came in and they brought in nonprofits to work with them. The municipalities were there, but more in a support role. I don't think we need to take the lead in being social workers. I think we need to I get the sense from this discussion, we need to take some action. The situation has gotten worse over the years, but we need to take actions before it really gets out of hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you. I agree with just about everything that's been said tonight, so there's not much point in repeating a lot of it, but since I first got on council, something that has been a pet peeve of mine is that the district passes bylaws and then doesn't enforce them. And so I've constantly been saying, don't vote for this bylaw if you're not going to enforce it. And that's a problem. And it's not just in this area. I've been dealing with people telling me about earlier tonight, there was another instance, and I've been listening for people for 6 years about this. So a couple of things I'd just like to say though. I am in favor of the all four, but that also makes me nervous because I think we've pretty much been doing maybe A and B already. So I'm leaning, like my emphasis would be on C, but then I have a problem with C where it says enforce more 24-hour regulation. Does that mean leaving people parking and we only check up every 24 hours? Because that's not going to work either. Because people will come and park at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and they've got all the way through again. And it's interrupted the safety of that neighborhood. And it's also caused problems at the tennis club. And I have spoken to the businesses that are down there, and I have walked through the neighborhood and really understood what the problem is there. And when I was there one time, there were a couple of dogs that were across the street, off leash, running around loose on the ICBC site. So there's all kinds of issues that are going on down there. It is complex, like Councillor Mary says. It's not one thing or the other. But my question would be, which maybe staff can think about and come back in their report, how are we gonna, if we use all 4 of these approaches, how do we keep track of what approach has been used on what vehicle and then be able to move it up to the next step? Because otherwise I think we can get stuck in the first 2 steps again. I think I agree with what Councillor Ma was saying, if I understood him correctly. This is a provincial problem, and hiring an outreach worker just means we get something else downloaded on us. So I think that maybe in their meetings with the city that perhaps there could be a discussion about that between them. And as far as those meetings go, I do remember that meeting that the 2 councils had, and we were very adamant about we wanted some actionable items to come out of those meetings. And I'm really disappointed to find out you've had 6 meetings and we've had no report about what's happening there. So we have to get to actionable items. We spend too much time in bureaucracy of planning, and sometimes that's appropriate, but sometimes planning and scheduling and all that, it's all feel good, but it doesn't actually do anything. The one other thing that hasn't been mentioned is some of those people down there that do need housing still won't want to go even to a shelter, even if there's a space. Some of those people just feel unsafe in shelters. So that's something else we have to keep in mind as well. And as far as transitional housing, since I've been on council, we've been working for transitional housing all along, but it's not just a one person controls the flow or how fast that works. The district doesn't just control it. We need a nonprofit to run it, and then we need a developer or somebody with funding to come in and provide that. So there's 3 partnerships there. And the district may be trying really hard to get transitional housing, but we need the other 2 pieces to get it done. So I just want to say that I think it's really time we have to do something for those people. We can't just keep letting them sit there. Some of those people really need housing, and some of them are really abusive of our rules. And one person I talked down there, much like Councillor Back said, told me the rent or the taxes that they pay. And they said, how come I have to pay those taxes? And they don't, and they get to make my neighborhood unsafe. This person actually has to lock her front door to her business because she's had people come in there and all kinds of things have happened to her staff. So she has a business that she has to lock the front door and people can't even get into it. So I just want something done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Pope, second time.
Just one quick question. The report is titled On-Street Parking of Large and Recreational Vehicles. And I just wondered, are we in any way excluding people who are living in their cars, not large vehicles or RVs? Because we shouldn't be.
Thank you very much to Councillor Pope through the mayor. The street and traffic bylaw sets out that when a vehicle is parked, it cannot be used for living accommodation. So that applies to all kinds of vehicles. The street and traffic bylaw has specific time limits and height or length and weight restrictions for large and recreational vehicles. So we're just making that, showing that distinction that isn't in the street and traffic bylaw. But living in a vehicle while it's parked is not permitted, and certainly this does extend to that as well.
I certainly think that we should be including those people in our data and our research that hopefully will come back to us. It's important because we know that there is a growing number of people living in their regular cars, not RVs, not anything. And they need to be accounted for too. That's all my questions.
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Pope. And I actually did have a follow-up question from Councillor Forbes's comment. How do you define the 24-hour, enforce more 24-hour regulations for ticketing and towing?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start that off and then might to look to the manager of bylaw services. The street and traffic bylaw sets out a couple different regulations. The normal time for a vehicle to stay on a street within the time limits is 72 hours. For large and recreational vehicles, the bylaw further says that it's a 24-hour maximum. So what, that application of the complaint and enforcement policy allows staff to be able to consider when investigating a complaint, different elements. And my understanding is that what we often will do is look at the 72 hours. We recognize in cases there are vehicles that are parked longer than that. And this again speaks to that managed approach that district staff through council policy have been following.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Councillor Mary said her comments were given with the greatest respect, and mine are as well towards Councillor Mary. But I believe there are sites that we could find in the district where we could make temporary provision for people who need to live in their homes. And in this regard, I simply don't want people living rough in the district. I don't want it for their sake, and I don't want it for our sake. It raises significant issues of sewage and sanitation. I mean, I've been down to Lloyd Street and wandered around there. It raises issues of security and crime and public disorder. It's not what we want in a community to have people living this way, and we need to find solutions. It's a mistake to normalize homelessness in this way. We've seen what happens in other communities when you tolerate it and just accept it. And I do believe there are sites where we could come up with some type of basic services that would cost less than other options for homelessness. And quite simply, the province needs to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I will just express a frustration with this process. When we did the homelessness task force, which I participated in with the city and West Vancouver, and I've said this before publicly as well, the province's only interest and approach was the housing first model. And while that is a fairly effective model for women-led households, families with kids, it is an extremely ineffective model for single men. And the bulk of the growth in the homeless and insecure housing for our community has been single men. And the Squamish Nation confirmed that it's been the same on their properties too. And seniors, sure. But the challenge is that the housing first model falls apart when they don't want shelter level 1 or level 2 housing. They would prefer the freedom, the community that comes with RVs in some of these neighborhoods, rather than the offerings of those bottom 3 levels of housing. And so the system isn't working, and the province hasn't given additional tools for us to be able to address it. Even as we create deep dive social and affordable housing units in our community, which we have produced a lot over the last 20 years, not enough, but a significant amount more than we did in the 20 years before that. It still hasn't been able to address the speed with which people are facing homelessness in our economy, broader throughout the Metro Vancouver and BC region. And so the situation is getting worse. Nobody wants to be Portland. As much as it sounds like a made-up figure, 2,600 businesses have closed in downtown Portland because of the public disorder matter that they've been facing in that community. And so we all need to take it very seriously, put our efforts towards it. But I think you're hearing a consensus from the council that we want to see more action, and we're not satisfied with the status quo. So I hope that's the message that staff hear from us tonight, and we'll be diligent in following up with that. Council, I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm prepared to call the question. There will be a follow-up motion, but I'm prepared to call the question on the motion that I presented. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Check back in with Councillor Murray. You were formulating wording for a follow-up motion specific to direct immediate action on abandoned vehicles.
Yeah, so staff identify all. Yeah, I am.
Hello,
There you go.
Can anybody hear me?
You're on.
That staff identify all abandoned and stored vehicles on Lloyd Avenue and take appropriate steps to have the owners remove them and or towed immediately. And that staff reverse the parking bans on the south end of Lloyd with time limited during the day.
So just to be clear, that wasn't in your motion that you presented before, and I don't think we've had that verified by staff that that's the current.
Okay, so then I'd like staff to report back right away, and I'd like the ability for council to give, to be able to give some flexibility. If there is a ban on Lloyd to the bottom of First, then we need to remove that and push that further away from the tennis center,
I'll
because
follow
that's
up.
sort of the center of the problem right now. So, and you're gonna second that? Or you're gonna
okay.
second the first part?
Yes, I can, yes.
Okay, that's what I'd like. Thank you. All
okay.
right. So then we'll give staff some flexibility to report back on the ban, but I'm going to drive down there after this meeting and I'm going to go look for myself. Just on the movement of these vehicles, I've always taken the position, and this, of course, this situation is growing and growing, and it's alive, and we have to deal with it as best we can. And I don't think we've done a great job at it, but it's here on our doorstep, and it's in my neighborhood, it's down in the Seymour, it's everywhere. It used to be just in a few places. Now it's everywhere. It's in Pemberton Heights. It's expanding, and people are. The gentrification of our communities has contributed to all of this. Land going, up in price, in value. It's become very challenging for people to live, and the affordability just doesn't exist in our society anymore. And we're surprised that we have all these homeless people. I'm not surprised at all. We've had homeless people in this community for decades, but it's growing, and we need to be able to allow what we have. There's a discussion that's coming to this council to talk about stored vehicles, work vehicles, companies that have fleets. Where do they go? As far as I'm concerned, let them park on the street at night. They go to work in the day. Why do I care that we have businesses that have built this community parking their trucks in the most cases in industrial areas, and then driving them in the day and supporting this community? For every action, there's a reaction. And the same thing with people that are living rough. Now, there are a lot of people that aren't living rough. They're choosing to live in their vans and drive around and live a vagabond lifestyle. I think for them, they are moving. For those that are living here, trying to save money on gas, stationary all the time, I think we do need to move them along. We've done that in the Seymour. We've had bylaw officers come out and ask the people that are living in trailers to please move along. Please move along to an area that is not so occupied by residents and businesses. Go into areas that are a little bit more obscure. And that's what's happening, and that's what's been working. I don't believe that it's going to be a solution for the long term, but certainly we have to react to this and try to keep this issue as fluid as possible and moving people rather than them just setting up camp and creating the challenges that they're creating.
Just going to press you to keep your comments on abandoned vehicles, because that's the portion we're talking about.
I understand, but it's all vehicles on space that we've got in the municipality. So removing the abandoned vehicles will allow us to move some of the people that are not abandoned and deal with this problem a little bit better than that we're dealing with now. So I think that's the action that we need. And I'd like staff actually, it sounds like we have a lot of data. So let's give us the data as far as how many vehicles, and please provide a report as soon as possible on what you're going to need us to, the power to give you to be able to tow these vehicles and have these owners. They must be registered. They can't be sitting on the street without a license plate. We have to have them come and get them and take them to appropriate storage areas and other places.
Thank you. As a seconder, I'll be supportive of the motion. No further comments. The motion is, we can have the motion read back, which is.
Staff identify all abandoned and stored vehicles on Lloyd Avenue and take appropriate steps to have the owners recover them and or towed immediately.
Okay, is that the wording that the clerk has?
And then to report back on the ban of parking on Lloyd Avenue.
Councillor Pope, did you have?
Yes. Quick wins.
Councillor Ma, you have your hand raised, virtual hand raised.
Yes, this is a question to staff through the mayor. Can staff comment is if they're doing that now? In a discussion that I had with them a couple months ago, they did go down and identify vehicles. I believe that's an ongoing practice, but I just want to confirm that, please.
Ms. Walker?
Through your worship, Councillor Ma, yes, that is our practice. We're actively monitoring any vehicles that we see dirt around the wheels. We're ticketing repeatedly and towing them off of the
Yeah,
the
I think
roads.
we're pressing to go
sorry.
beyond monitoring and
We are ticketing and towing
And towing.
abandoned vehicles
Have abandoned and stored vehicles on our streets.
because
sorry,
it's.
I just want to clarify. Councillor Ma has the floor at this moment. I'll come back to you, Councillor.
And I believe in discussions with staff, they were also working with the authorities to run plates to make sure that the vehicles down there were, one, insured, and if they were insured, were they owners in the community? And if they were, then, you know, most likely they were just parking the vehicle. So I believe staff are taking some of these actions already. So maybe just if staff can comment on that.
Through your
Walker.
worship to Councillor Ma, yes, we are taking those actions daily. And we're, you know, trying to figure out which ones are abandoned. It takes a little bit, but as soon as we know for sure, we don't see any sign of anybody being occupied in there, we're ticketing and towing them off the roads.
It's not that I want to vote against it. I just believe some of the actions are already being taken and but put it to the vote.
That's your choice. Okay. Anybody else like to speak to the item? Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is passed with Councillor Ma opposed. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Council. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We usually sometime around 9 o'clock have a bit of a stretch and bio break. And so we have only one item left, but let's have a quick stretch. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
You staying on the next one?
All right, Council, we're going to reconvene. We're moving on to item 8.6. This is the Safe Streets for Delbrook Community Center. This is a council report from Councillor Pope. First, just to get this item on the floor, I'll look to Councillor Pope for a motion. It is not. There it is. Now it is. Go for it.
This motion calls for staff to review what options are available to create safer streets at the Delbrook Community Center for all of our community. So I move this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back, you indicating second? Yes, thank you. Please carry on.
Thank you. So as anyone who frequents the Delbrook Community Center knows, the parking lot is often full during the school year. Busy parents trying to get their kids to swim lessons or soccer practices scramble to find a spot, mainly after 3 p.m. That inevitably leads to parking along Queens Road, close to the community center. NVRC staff and visitors to the adjacent townhouses also park on Queens, even though there is visitor parking in the townhouse complex. During weekdays, about 10 cars are on each side of the street at any given time, give or take. But those few parked cars cause enormous obstacles and unnecessary risk for anyone trying to get to the community center without a car. That includes students getting to soccer practice after school on their scooters, seniors on e-bikes like me trying to get to pickleball, kids wanting to scooter, and groups from the rec center who meet in the parking lot to hike up Mosquito Creek. All face incredibly dangerous road conditions, especially in the last few blocks before the community center. And many have written us this week to say they would cycle to Delbrook if it was safe. Obviously, that would free up a lot of capacity in the parking lot. So I want to show you now a video of the problem that we're talking about. And if we could get that up full screen, do I need to do it full screen from here? Can it go on both screens or just the one?
It'll show up once he's presenting.
Oh, okay. So here we are. This is one of the safest little spots right along outside of the Delbrook Community Center. And this is the one place, a tiny little stretch, where there is actually a sort of bike lane with rough painted lines in. So there we are with our happy cyclists. And things start to go wrong really fast, right after that. As a cyclist, watch the guy at the far that I zoomed in on there. See how he's forced to merge with those cars? And that's really the least of the problems as far as some of the other spots are concerned. Here's another guy on a scooter, which is, you know, of course, what we're seeing more and more of. And again, forced to merge into traffic. And this, by the way, is a really super quiet Saturday afternoon. Normally it's jammed. Now this is going the other way, just outside of the Delbrook Community Center. And see, this rider now has been coming along a bike lane from Edgemont, but now has to suddenly merge into traffic there to get where she's going. And this is coming from along Queens from the other side of the street. There's another rider. You see how close they are? Like I'm right at the parked cars there. And there's very little room to navigate. Here's another rider coming in and again, pushed out into traffic with nowhere else to go. So many people aren't driving, or many people who aren't driving, students on scooters. Maybe we need some of that. Many people who aren't driving, and even the disabled fellow who wrote to us this week to say he can't drive, so he does ride his e-bike, but they are all terrified of these last few blocks, including me. And the DNV's long-term plan is on the books to create active transportation routes, including this section to link Lynn Valley with Edgemont Village. But the work isn't scheduled to start until 2028. So I propose that these few blocks, one of the most treacherous sections of road, be prioritized as soon as possible for creating a safe pathway. So all community center users can get safely to Delbrook. The timing is perfect because Harry Jerome opens up next year, and many parents from Lynn Valley and other areas will take their kids there for swimming and after-school programs. That will also significantly reduce parking congestion at Delbrook. But of course, we know some people must take their cars. And I met some of those parents out here this weekend with their 2 kids. And so I have a few suggestions that I'm hoping staff can also investigate and report back on. And these include things like priority parking for carpoolers and those with 2 or more kids after 3 p.m. You know, everybody used to carpool before COVID, and then nobody carpooled. And many parents have not gotten back into carpooling since. I know that was certainly the case for my daughter for the last 2 years at Handsworth. Nobody was carpooling anymore. Some are, that's great. So they'd get priority. We also should be providing transit pass subsidies to rec center admin staff to incentivize them to take transit. And that's the same as the district policy currently. We can create a drop-off and pickup zone in the upper lot during daycare drop-off times. We can consider asking the new Hollybrook building to rent some of their car park spaces for staff if they have any extras. They're opening just 2 blocks from there, and find other possible locations for staff. Enforcement is problematic, but I expect with kids in the car, parents will feel compelled to model the right behavior and go along with what the restrictions are in the parking lot. Ultimately, it may mean some will have to park 2 blocks away on Delbrook outside the baseball diamond instead of right out in front of Queens. But this current mode isn't working for anyone. So the least we can do is try a new way and ask staff to come up with some ideas. And just before I go, I wanted to show that this is not a new concept. In fact, it was dreamed up by in 2017 with former Mayor Richard Walton and former councillor Matthew Bond. And they held this event and invited all the kids to cycle to the community center. And they did. And look at this. Streets were lined with kids cycling over to the Delbrook Community Center. There's former councillor Bond. And that's my motion.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beck, you're the seconder on the matter. Do you have any
Thank
additional
you,
comments?
Mayor Little. Thank you, Councillor Pope, for bringing forward this motion. I'm very happy to second it. And as someone who regularly uses the Delbrook Community Rec Center, I know how popular it is. I think from the day it opened, it's been full, with so many different user groups. But there is no safe way to get there if you're not in a vehicle. I'm a fairly confident rider, and I still avoid Queens, even when I'm riding on my own, never mind with my kids on the back, which is most often the case these days. It has always been part of the plan, as you've highlighted, to make that connection between the 2 town centers. But I think it does make sense to prioritize it. I think there's probably a lot that we can do just with some of the quick implementation methods of creating safe cycling facilities that we've been using in recent years. And I think, part of that will involve likely, restricting or removing some of the street parking there. But I think if you give people a safe alternative to driving, they're much more likely to want to use it. And we certainly heard from a lot of people in response to your motion tonight. So yeah, on the whole, I think it's, this is, as I say, one of our most popular community centers, and there's never been a safe way for people to really get there. And I've experienced it many times myself, just how that section of Queens is particularly challenging. So yeah, looking forward to staff, if it is supported tonight, just reporting back with some quick type solutions that we could come up with just for this section, to even be an interim measure until a more permanent cycling facility linking the 2 town centers comes to fruition.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Mr. Hunter, I'm wondering if you can tell us about the challenges of parking at the Delbrook Rec Center, specifically for staff, and what happens when the facility is overflowing. Soccer games are on, particularly in the winter, the fall, and what happens? What does that street parking do for the Delbrook Rec Center?
Through your worship, through you to Councillor Murray, I think there's certainly ebbs and flows in parking demand at Delbrook. As everyone has mentioned, it's a really popular center. There are, I'd say, there are certainly challenges weekends and evenings when the adjacent fields are in action. But it's also very, very busy on certain weekdays. Sort of if you're past sort of 9 o'clock in the morning, most of the underground parking will certainly be filled most of the time. So the outdoor, the uncovered parking next to the field is really, really
is heavily used, and there would be times by 9 o'clock in the morning where that would be full. In terms of staff parking, staff have been directed not to use the underground parquet. That's obviously a priority for patrons. Some use street parking, some use the lower uncovered parking lot. And I think, as the center is really busy, there is spill off into the adjacent neighborhoods, which from what I understand, sort of prior to my time, but I think probably when the facility was first opened, that did cause that was upsetting to some of the surrounding neighborhood. But parking on that site is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hunter. Thank you. So this is a challenge. Mayor Little and myself were on council when this building was approved. And the recommendation from staff was that we allow one level of parking in the facility because it was felt at the time that there would be alternative forms of transportation that people would use. And that has not come to fruition. I think even if and I think it's really important to remember that the parking is not, it's already at a tipping point at many times, depending on the season, depending on the events that are being held in the park, the sports users that are coming in. So even with some small tweaks to get people going there in alternative ways, there's still going to be a parking issue. Hindsight's 2020, and it's you look back and just the design where the pickup drop off is complex and problematic. I mean, I think now, and you and I challenged it. You and I challenged the fact that there was going to be one level of parking there. It's a regional destination. We have patrons coming from all over the North Shore to use the facility. And so it's very difficult to understand how we are going to move forward as the community grows and how more people are going to be using the facility, how more people are going into the park facility to play soccer, and how those areas will be, their programming will be increased. I think there is an opportunity to look at a share the road concept. We do that in many areas of the municipality and in the city of North Vancouver. I know the transportation plan or the alternative, the cycling plan for that corridor. I think it's going to be a very challenging prospect because we have nowhere to put the overflow of these cars and specifically our staff. Otherwise, they wind up on side streets, and there we trigger other problems. I know that there is that route down 29th that comes down on the south side. And then once you cross Westview, there is a green way through there. There's a right of way on the border of the city of North Vancouver. It's problematic with a creek running through it. There is, opportunity to look at that in the future to get to the center. But I get it. It's we built a facility that we wanted people to use alternative forms to get there, but that's not happening even on a very micro scale. It's just not. And in the winter months, it's not going to happen. We know the mode shift has not moved. We've talked about that at multiple meetings. And so I understand the challenge. I know on the Dollarton, it is share the road. All the way along the Dollarton Highway, it is share the road. So I think that is something that we can put in place to accommodate those cyclists that are using that corridor, so there is an understanding between cars and cyclists. And I think this is going to take some great thought for a long-term solution into the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I want to thank Councillor Poe for bringing this report forward. I have gone by and checked out the roads around the rec center. I want to say I support a connected bike network where cyclists and people on scooters can move around safely. Although this report seems to deal with a relatively simple fix, the quick wins, there are other issues to consider. If this report's approved, I want to ensure that these quick fixes work with the bigger plan. I think back to when this council was first elected, we dealt with modifying the bike lane on 29th. It costs extra money and time because there were some issues that weren't addressed with the original design. Staff do have an active transportation plan in the works, but according to this report, it's not supposed to happen until 2028. I don't know for sure what the timeline on that is. Is there a staff that's online that can speak to that?
Mr. Cullen.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Meyer. So we are prioritizing all the different corridors we're working on through the district. Right now, it's 2028 is when the Queensdale to Edgemont corridor is currently planned to be prioritized for planning and then design, consultation, and then implementation.
Okay. You know, people are calling this, you know, a little project, you know, quick wins, but it'll still take resources. The challenge I have sometimes is staff frequently get criticized for not delivering on priorities. And sometimes these other projects will get onto their schedule and this throws planning out of whack a bit. And one of my concerns is just looking at these two blocks. When I went there, there were other sections that didn't make sense. As the video said, if you leave the rec center and head west on Queens, it's challenging. But in this report, it only talks about the two blocks towards the east. You know, if this section is done as a one-off, I'm not sure if we'll realize any economy of scale that could be achieved if a bigger area was looked at. So, you know, staff would look at all the issues when they work on their plan. I want to save lanes for cyclists and people on scooters, but let's do it properly. Let's have it planned out. I'm not going to support this report as is. And if I have an opportunity, I'd like to present amendment.
I don't know what the amendment is to tell you whether it's fair.
Yeah, if I can ask staff to put that up.
Oh. Can you read it just?
Okay.
Thank you, through your worship. The amendment that Councillor Ma is referring to would be to following the phrase Delbrook Community Center, to strike that within 2 to 3 block radius and replace it with the following phrase as one of the focus areas of the active transportation plan review, and to expedite the active transportation plan earlier than 2028. I'll put it on the screen now.
No, that's not it.
I've got to see if it materially changes it or not. And so.
Sorry.
Still have a minute and 17 to speak about the original motion. You want to do that now, or and then we'll consider the amendment?
I'm finished. I just think that we need to let staff plan this properly.
That's a comparison of the original to Councillor Maz not saying both, just the second clause is what Councillor Maz. I don't know that it materially.
Let's just wait till it goes up.
Okay, well, I don't think I mean, it doesn't undermine the original motion, so it could be considered an amendment on top of the motion. So I think it's fair if someone seconds it as an amendment to the motion, then we have a debate about whether that's of interest. Would anybody like to second Councillor Ma's additional wording? An amendment. Yeah, I think that I'm not going to second it. I think the original is fine the way it is. I think I get what you're getting at, but there's no seconder for the additional motion, so there won't be any additional time spent on the amendment. You still have 1 minute and 17 seconds if you would like. Okay, thank you.
Fine.
All right, so back on the original motion then, would anybody else like to speak to it? I guess I'll just make some quick comments about it. I do think generally, as a long-term plan, that the Queens corridor is going to have a dedicated separated biking infrastructure all the way through it eventually over time. We do have to be sensible in how we implement that in this space. I happen to think that there's a parcel of land on the east side of the building next to the daycare area that could be converted from current sprawling hedge into staff parking lot. And I think that's something we should look at on the east side of the building. It's a dedicated staff parking lot in that space that might help us relieve both issues, give us an opportunity to create some staff dedicated parking, but also get some of the cars off the street in that area. I did just want to highlight, this area is actually up for repaving fairly soon. If Mr. Cohen's still on, what's your timeline for the repaving in this section?
Yeah, so Mayor Little, the actual paving is going to be happening this summer. We can't keep Queens in its current condition following the fiber optic project the last couple of years. And so that work can proceed. Any direction provided from council this evening isn't going to be precluded because that paving can still go ahead. And then any modifications can be done after the fact as well, if that's the case.
So that project is tendered, it's happening. We can't stop that without a significant penalty. Now, it doesn't mean you can't change the lines after the fact or make alterations in future. It just means that there is going to be a project going on there in the short term. It'll be very visible and impactful as we're doing it. But I don't want people to think that that means we haven't taken this other issue seriously at the time. It's just already been contracted on the space.
And to clarify, that will also mean that during the paving, the parking will have to be removed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, temporarily, as it is in all
Timing
those
is
cases.
perfect.
And so that's still going to go ahead. I do think this is reasonable. I think that this is the eventual use of that space, connecting up the communities along the Queens corridor has been something that we've been working towards from the other ends, and eventually it will. So I look forward to staff reviewing that, and also would love staff to review the possibility of staff parking on the east side of the property because it's just a big fat hedge that's sitting there and may help us better use the space. Councillor Beck.
Thank you. Just to reiterate my support for the original motion, which I see as a fairly simple report back compared to the amendment, but I understand the spirit of Councillor Ma's comments, and that we obviously want to make sure that this is not competing with other priorities. But I do think it does fall in line with our active transportation plans. This is connecting to a main town center of Edgemont. Just in terms of responding to some of the comments around mode shift, because there has been a lot of talk about that around the council table recently. One of the biggest reasons we haven't seen a greater uptake of active transportation is because we don't have this connected network of safe cycling infrastructure. And I think the example, with all due respect, Councilor Murray, of a shared lane on Dollarton is not an example of a safe cycling route by any means. In fact, Dollarton is one of the areas where we need to be looking at more protected cycling infrastructure, but it's going to look slightly different in different parts of the community. I recognize that, but I think we do need to strive for, protected cycling facilities wherever we can. And I think this is one of those stretches where we do need to try to create a facility that's, safe for all ages and abilities.
Okay. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you. I want safe streets there, and I was going back and forth to Edgemont last week, and from Delbrook to the Del Rio Road, it's extremely difficult even for car drivers, because you've got that it's a very narrow road. There's parking on both sides, and you're trying to watch what the car in front of you is doing. And you're in a narrow, and then you get right down to Rio, and then you got to look up and look to see the light, and if you've got the okay to keep going. So there's a lot happening in that intersection that it's just not safe for anything, whether it be active transportation or cars going through there. But I do want the safe streets, but there's a couple considerations I have. One is when I start seeing something new like this and prioritizing, it brings me back to thinking that councillors who sit around this table and say, I'm not paying more than having more than a 5.4% property tax, we're adding things back into where they weren't planned to be. So that concerns me. They're still going to get done. It's just a question of time, but this adding stuff back in just really concerns me that our property tax rate will go up. Also, the wording here, I mean, it's been talked about as Councillor Back just said, from Lynn Valley to Edgemont. And this doesn't really define the 2 to 3 block radius, and it isn't going anywhere near Delaney's like in the pictures that we were showing. It's not going up to Edgemont. So I'm concerned about defining what 2 to 3 blocks we're talking about. Are we talking about Delbrook to Rio? Is that the intent? Because we're also been referring in conversation to Edgemont. So I would need that defined a bit more too. And I'm wondering, I mean, if there's some inexpensive things that we could do, I think that's the route we should go. But the way we're talking about prioritizing it and options, and that sounds like it's going to be a lot more than just a few dollars to do. So if I could get all those things answered, maybe I'd be for it. But at the moment, I can't vote for it.
Okay. All right. Councillor Murray.
Do we have any information about that or no? We really don't.
If there's a specific question you want to pose to staff about.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. It's the person who wrote the motion. It's Councillor Pope who wrote the motion, and she's got in here within a 2 to 3 block radius. So I'd ask that of Councillor Pope. Are you talking about from Delbrook to Del Rio?
Yeah, so specifically, it's both sides of the road from Delbrook, if we're talking about Del Rio, over to Westview. And then it's that one block from Del Rio over to, as you're heading past, sorry, let me word this correctly. It's the one block heading west to Edgemont as well, but only on the north side. So staff know this because the south side coming from Edgemont actually does have a bike lane there already. So it's, you know, kind of all over the map. So I wanted to leave it as open as possible so that they would be able to respond to that within their knowledge base.
So the map that's provided in page 2 of the report, that focus area, it should also extend one further block west just on the north side.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's understood by staff, although the particular staff aren't in the room at the moment. We can follow up with that, but the nature of the wording actually allows them more flexibility than the focus area that's specifically laid out. So I think there's still room for that.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to confuse it because the pictures and what some discussion has been is to Edgemont. We're not talking about to Edgemont in this motion.
Queens adjacent to the Delbrook facility, but stretching out in either direction. I think that's covered under this. I don't think that's going to be the contentious issue. The contentious issue is going to be what you displace in the process and how you accommodate it. But the focus area, anyway.
Can I do a friendly amendment? Something.
But it wouldn't be a friendly amendment, just to be clear. There's no such thing as a friendly
Unfriendly?
amendment. We, if it materially changes the motion, then we need to have a vote or discussion about it.
Well, could we just get options brought back and leave out the prioritization until we find out what the options are? And then we'd have a better idea of what possible costs might be too.
The way I read that is it's to report back on options to prioritize. So whether those options are going to, it's not telling staff they must prioritize it. It's what would it look like if we were going to prioritize it. And so I don't see that as being materially different from what you're saying, unless you think that that's not what you intend.
We're looking for a specific option that's going to provide prioritization, correct?
I'm assuming all of the options they'll bring back will be intended to prioritize safer options in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't see that as being materially different enough to warrant an amendment, but
I just have trouble that we're getting staff to redo things and we're changing, we're going to impact, maybe not in a big way, but we're going to impact budget and budget planning, and then that may impact property taxes, and that's where I'm going with it. So
that's all fair. It's up to the
I'll just
council.
say no.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Did you?
Well, I think that, this was about, looking at some bus passes for staff, looking at opening up the gravel parking lot at the bottom of the lot. I think that staff is going to have to hear all of us on this very clearly, that, looking at creating a bike lane in this corridor right now is going to be even if you put a parking lot next to the building, there's going to be a significant cost to that. And up against, you're talking about priority about what we're going to do with this bike lane versus priority of all projects that we're facing right now, costs that we're facing right now. Really, you can't do it section by section. If you're, there has to be something for the entire road. And I think that's, that is going to be a significant project in itself. So I think there's a lot to bring forward and to discuss here. If there's quick wins, just if you're talking about the south side too, which Councillor Pope mentioned, the south side, there's a whole pickup drop-off area there. There's a bus stop. What do? We cut into the sidewalk to be able to put laybys in. Well, I think there's options. Bus passes and opening up more spots in an already existing parking lot is one thing. And then completely redefining the road and how it operates with no cars on both sides in a 3-block radius is quite another, including looking at the parking lot option. So, I just think that there's a lot to consider. And I think, this has to take on a far greater discussion than an item being brought forward on an agenda. There was a plan. I don't know if it's applicable anymore, given the density and the amount of traffic in the area, and I don't know how we're going to achieve it.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to Councillor Vogt for bringing the motion forward. I'm happy to support it as worded. I just emphasize options to prioritize, much yet to be explored in terms of what comes back. And I would observe that if we implement whatever changes we're going to implement during the paving, which is currently scheduled, that will be cheaper. So I hope that our options to prioritize come back in time that can be coordinated with the paving, which is currently being planned. Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, that displacement piece, I think, is the trickiest bit. Not because I'm worried about displacing long-term car storage or something like that. It's the daycare, there's a 15-minute drop off, and that's kind of an important thing. And so I'd be looking for how they can accommodate that without losing that in some way, because it was designed for that purpose. But I think staff have heard enough from us to at least come forward with some options to improve the situation. So I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with councillors Ma, Forbes, and Murray opposed. Okay, thank you very much, council. Moving into the reports section of this evening's meeting. I had intended to start off the meeting with discussion about a critical incident that occurred on the weekend, but I didn't really want to do that with the children's art projects being recognized at the front of the meeting. So I will take a moment at the beginning of the reports segment to just comment about the tragic incident that occurred at Kate's Park on Saturday evening. It's you know, everybody set out that day to have a great time and go out and enjoy a beautiful weather day and have picnics in the park and head out on the water. And unfortunately, tragedy struck, and we did lose an 11-year-old person that day, and we have another young person that is still in hospital in serious condition. And all I can really say, this is going to be a complicated, longer process to sort of figure out exactly what happened. But I will just restate that voter safety needs to be top of mind for all participants in the water space. You have to be up to date on the most current safety practices and how you give space to other boaters and how you alter your speed to make sure that you don't have you know, come upon people so quickly. And it's so, my heart goes out to the families, and obviously that's the most important thing we want to convey, is that we just feel terrible for the families involved. But also, as a bit of a privilege with this office, I get to spend a lot of time with the first responders. And so my thoughts do go to them on the impact of them starting their shift that day and heading out and having to deal with a deceased 11-year-old in that space. And so I do just want to assure council that not only did we make sure that critical incident debriefing was available to our firefighters, we opened it up to the other agencies that responded, because RCMSAR and paramedics were also on the scene to make sure that they had an opportunity to debrief after the incident. So we're doing our best to be able to support not only our own agencies, but the partner agencies that go into those spaces. It's going to be a while to sort out what exactly happened. We have encouraged all of our residents, if you have information that leads up to how that incident occurred, please contact non-emergency and file a report. And generally speaking, we want to make sure that our community feels that they have the agency to call 911. If you see a reckless boater on the waterfront, immediately you can call 911. If later on in the day you're like, you know, I didn't like how that was happening, then we'd encourage you to call our non-emergency number, which is 604-985-1311. And I just want you to know that that's going to be welcomed and it's going to be taken seriously. And so I would encourage people, if you see actions, please say something, and we will do what we can to respond to it. But I did just want to add that as a report today. It's going to be a long time sorting out what happened, but you'll have our commitment to make sure that we support that process. On a much lighter note, I did want to say that we actually started Saturday with the opening of the Fire Training Center down in Maplewood, and a number of the crews that were present there ended up attending the event later on in the day. And it was excellent. We had multiple generations of fire chiefs and personnel present. We had received a speech from Chief Stacy, who started with the district in 1954 and was the chief in the 1980s. And he's about 95 years old. And I went and I shook his hand, and his hands were like he was a cement worker. Like he was just, for a 95-year-old to have such a grip, it was amazing. And he shared stories about the history of fire services, about transitioning to from sort of regional services to volunteer firefighters to professional services. Many of those key milestones took place while he was the chief of the district fire. And so it was a great event. It's an excellent facility. And as I said in the speech that day, we want to make sure that we have high quality facilities, high quality training, and high quality equipment, and we put it in the hands of the right people. And that's our commitment to our community on disaster response, preparedness, and first responders. So that was another highlight of the week. We also had the North Shore Community Foundation Golf Tournament. It used to be called the Mayor's Golf Tournament. We decided to put the Community Foundation out in front for that. They're at an amazing milestone. They have just crossed $2 million raised for community initiatives. $1 million of it went to projects along the way as they were going, and the other $1 million goes into an endowment. And so we've been building up this endowment, and then each year the proceeds from that endowment do other projects as well. And so it's $2 million has been raised through that since its inception, and it's going strong. This year, there were projects with Hollyburn Family Services, with First Nations organizations, and with Minova. One of the smaller projects was that all the grade 5 students will be funded to go to the museum for free this year and learn about community history and culture. And so that was a good opportunity as well. But we did recognize Mike Boehm for his leadership of that organization for, I believe it's 11 years as president, and all of the creative fundraising projects that they've come up with over that time. So that was another thing I wanted to highlight. Last, I wanted to highlight a significant retirement with the district. Richard Bowes has been a fixture with the district for a long time, and he, as our environmental officer, has been a key part of really what North Vancouver is. Our environmental spaces, our stewardship of natural wetlands in our community. He's been such an amazing advocate and helped us engage our community in environmental stewardship. And so I was able to attend Richard's retirement party, and I passed along our congratulations to him and wish him all the best in his next endeavors. He's still young and fit. It's not full retirement for him, but they are moving and do have other plans for semi-retirement, we'll say. But a good event. Anybody else like to make a report? I see Councillor Ma.
Thank you. Last Thursday, Councillor Pope and I attended a housing event organized by North Shore Community Housing Action Committee. Mark from Hollyburn Community Service was there. There was also a speaker, Erica from the BC Nonprofit Housing Association, and Craig from UBC, and he worked on the BC Housing Needs Calculator. It was a really good session. The key takeaways for me was that mix of housing and mix of tenants is key to build community. You want to have seniors, you want to have singles, you want to have families on the same building, so everyone can thrive. The amount of second point was increasing rental stock is important, especially purpose-built rentals, because that gives you a security of tenure. Third point was we need to have compelling incentives for private sector developers. I'll just leave it at that. There's so many aspects to that. And then finally, there's an important role for nonprofit housing providers to address the affordability issues. But it was a very good session. I'm not sure if Councillor Pope has anything else to add. Some of the speakers were pretty captivating.
Yeah, it was a very good session, and I was particularly moved by the two speakers who shared their real life experience with us. And one of them was a young woman from Afghanistan who left everything behind to arrive here as a refugee. And she said affordable housing saved her life. And another one was an 81-year-old guy named Rudy, who also shared with us that he and his wife, after living for many, many years in a house on the North Shore, were reno-evicted. And so he and she suddenly found themselves like looking for shelter. And so they were he was also saying how affordable housing, they would have been living in their car, is the way he put it, had it not been for having some affordable housing. So yeah, it was good.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson, do you have a report?
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to report on the activities in the North Shore Standing Committee on Substance Use, which met in the last couple of weeks. I've chaired that committee since 2021. Of interest, perhaps, to council and really to all British Columbians, we had a presentation on non-lethal aspects of opioid use. Of course, we hear about what was 6 a day who died of opioid use. It's now down to 5 a day, and we can applaud that progress. We heard a presentation from Coastal Health that many more than that, many more than 5 a day, are suffering permanent brain injuries from lack of oxygen, which occurs to them before they're resuscitated. And then these people spend the rest of their lives impaired, just as they would with a concussion, serious concussion. So on that topic, that committee is resolute in honoring Overdose Awareness Day, which will be August 31st. It'll be the last day before Labor Day, so the Sunday before Labor Day. And I'll be indicating where in the district we're going to have some kind of event, and perhaps members of this council may wish to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Beck.
Yes, thank you. The week before last, along with Councillor Pope, I attended the annual Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the FCM conference, which was held in Ottawa this year. The theme was Stronger Together. It's always a valuable opportunity at these conferences to connect with local leaders from across the country, exchange ideas on many of the shared challenges that our communities are dealing with, from housing to climate and many other issues. There were a number of resolutions that were adopted at FCM this year, such as improving access to healthcare in rural parts of Canada, strengthening Canada's economy by diversifying trade. Of course, trade and tariffs were certainly a theme, and the future of Canada Post, as well as strengthening Arctic sovereignty and security through municipalities. We did hear from the Prime Minister and as well as other federal leaders about how this new government intends to work with local governments. Some promising updates there. I also attended a number of sessions on issues such as addressing homelessness with housing first approaches, the use of AI in local government, some very interesting stuff there, and a presentation on building a thriving nightlife economy, which it did make me think differently about what happens after the traditional day of most people ends, and for all those people who don't work 9-to-5 jobs, and what kind of services do they need that aren't on the regular 9-to-5 sort of Monday to Friday schedule. So anyway, lots of interesting content and connections made at the FCM in Ottawa this year.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Councillor Pope.
Thank you. I also I was attending the FCM conference in Ottawa, and I always call these conferences successful when I learn something. And in addition to all of the things that Councillor Back has mentioned, I was so interested to hear from councillors from the city of Ottawa who were talking about what they've done to respond to the mental health crisis. And like here in the district, the number of mental health calls to 911 has increased dramatically in the last few years. And here it takes up an abundance of RCMP time to respond to those calls. And so what they've done in Ottawa, where they don't have the RCMP, they have the Ottawa Police Service, is they worked it out with them to triage the 911 calls so that there's an actual category for mental health. And then those calls where somebody isn't in immediate danger of dying or whatever they have mental health care workers sent out who are highly trained. They're not necessarily nurses, and they're certainly not RCMP officers. And 90% of the calls are dealt with through that system. So I have asked for a meeting of this council to meet with a Solicitor General at the next UBCM so we can talk about what they've done in Ottawa and if it can be implemented here through the RCMP, which is what the Solicitor General here is responsible for. And that was just one of my many takeaways from the conference.
Great, thank you very much. See no further reports. Having completed the business of this evening's meetings, I'll accept adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Murray. I just want to say thank you very much to staff for preparing reports for consideration. Thank you to the public for sticking with us through the meeting, and wish everybody a fantastic evening. Good night.